Hey, good morning, everybody. This is George from
Morning.
Valiant, and I'm joined here with Marianne, our head of training, and Justin Pancino, our
Hello.
CIO. And today we're going to do a little something different than we normally do, and we're going to focus on some online learning resources for parents and students. We're kind of got thrust into this new reality of our kids learning from home, and a lot of us work remotely or in high tech and tech jobs, that sort of thing, so we have a good experience of it. But we just want to try to help out some parents here that may be having some questions or some unknowns. I have three children myself, and they're on there online, and it's confusing as could be because it's like there's so many different platforms. I have three kids in three different schools, and they probably each have multiple platforms. I'm going to let each one of Marianne and Justin kind of say how they kind of fit in all this, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm obviously a training manager at Valiant. So, hopefully, you all have seen some of the stuff I've been making in our live chats about working remotely. But again, we want to focus on the students having to do their work remotely and how, the teachers are giving us materials and how parents can help. I mean, I did help my my future stepdaughter with some of her like learning how to use Google because that's what her school's been going through. So that's been really interesting as well.
Right. Yeah. And Justin, this is an expert in other things. And
Yeah. And in addition to just general tech knowledge, I, a, almost a lifetime ago at this point, I worked at a company that one of the products they built was an online learning platform. Many, many years ago, got picked up for some local schools, and since not really around anymore. And I have some secondhand knowledge because Felicia, my wife, is a teacher. She's actually teaching a remote class from the couch as we speak. So,
Yep.
yeah,
uh, made sure
exactly.
to ask her many many questions.
So we wanted to put this together a little bit because there's some of the struggles we're seeing internally. It came up in the conversations we've had as just in our management team, with our other staff, and just in general. So anyway, part of the idea here is that we're going to break it down in a couple of pieces, just so that it's all kind of straightforward. We'll talk about some of the hardware, some of the challenges of hardware and resources in the house, and some of the things we can do about that alleviate that. Next, we'll talk about some online resources. And finally, maybe just a little bit of just some links and things that could be helpful to get there. So I'm going to hand this over to Justin and talk about preparing for the technology and the hardware that you need. So
Yeah.
JP, take it off
So
from there.
yeah, one of the questions that we got in was how do you prepare your home network, your home for learning and working and doing classes remote. Some of it's very similar to working remote, but there are some things that you can do, especially if you've got multiple people in the house. The biggest thing that we're going to see, and George has a great example of that
Yeah.
with the internet out by your house, is that the infrastructure for internet just is getting a little overwhelmed in places because we have so many people that used to be centralized in offices doing stuff, now disparate out in places and doing lots of video and calling
Right.
and very time sensitive things. So in your house, some basic things that you can do: if you can wire things in rather than Wi-Fi, that's always better. Running a cable and plugging it in is going to just be that much stronger, and it's going to make Wi-Fi better for everything else. But a step above that is to take a look at the kinds of devices that you're running. There's common ones like Google or Linksys will have tools built into it that you can log in and do it's called quality of service, QoS, and it may be called something else like device priority or like that. What it does is you can say that, I want, during the school day, I want these three laptops to get the best bandwidth, and I want the Xbox and phones to have, whatever's left. And in that
Right.
way, if you've got one person who's trying to work and one person who's playing a game, you can kind of steer internet towards the person who's working.
Right.
There, that can get tricky. We are going to do a real deep dive on this in a coming up Q&A coming up with Gene McMurray, one of the partners at Valiant, who
Mhm.
has a very large depth of knowledge when it comes to optimizing Wi-Fi. So we'll get into some
Yes.
details of that. But take a look at the instruction manual for the devices that you have, or you can even do a quick Google search for it if the device you have supports it. That's a great way to kind of keep things streamlined for internet.
Yeah, I think another thing I just say during the school day and is try to minimize the Netflix, Amazon Prime streaming, because those are like real bandwidth hogs in terms of what they use, especially just a small availability during the work and school day. So we're seeing that in our house. There's 5 of us, and we're all working remotely. So it's definitely impactful. That
Yeah,
regard.
and definitely be able to, feel free to say, hey, I've got a video call at this time, you guys. Let's just maybe read a book.
Exactly. Go outside for actually stay close in. We don't want anyone
Yeah.
social distancing. Trying to follow that along.
Play
So-
Stardew Valley offline.
that's a good point, Marianne.
Yeah.
Or watch a DVD. Those things,
Yeah.
that might be the way to do it.
Physical media, yeah.
So one of the other things that's come up quite a bit, just talking to a bunch of different people, has been availability of hardware in the house. And Marianne, you have some ideas on that you put together. So I'd love to hear some about that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is exactly what we just talked about, is that some of the things that you're going to do are going to require a computer and some won't. So there may be a little bit of scheduling that you wanted to work out. If you don't have as many students as computers, you are going to have to schedule that out. I know, George, you talked about like the whole like it's my turn thing, but it's really going to have to be like there's going to have to be priorities. There's going to have to be a structure so that everyone just knows like, oh, it's
right.
This is how it is.
I think that part of the thing might be like if the person has to do a video chat, they should have the priority on the machine that can work best for the video chat versus the person who's doing like very easy, let's say easy or more like, hey, write a journal entry on this. That can be done like off time because if your appointment or like if you're teaching a class where everyone's kind of doing a Zoom call or a Google Hangout. You want to prioritize the machine for that time. It sounds like simple, but just seeing practical, it gets complicated.
Well, yeah, I mean, in my house, we only have so many computers with cameras, laptops. So if I need to be working, I need to be using the laptop, and like that takes priority. And then my stepdaughter can go play games, or if she's even just writing a paper, she's doing schoolwork, but she doesn't need the camera. She can go on the desktop computer, which we don't have a computer for. So, or sorry, we don't have a camera for. So yeah, it's a little bit about that. I mean, some of it's also going to be, if you guys are sharing computers, you also have to think about security and access and things like that. It may be a requirement for your job, or it may just be like protection for your kids. So if on one computer, you can set up separate logins so everyone has sort of their own desktop thing. But also keep in mind if your kids are now using Google to school or any of those accounts, always double check that people are logged into the right thing. One thing's going to be the kids are going to be limited depending on who they can contact, which is a good protection for them. But also like you don't want your kids to accidentally contact your clients and things like that. So make sure that you can have things log out. You can have your kids join. Don't forget using incognito mode or private browsing makes it so once you exit out of the browser, you're automatically logged out of your Google accounts. So that's important to keep it when you guys are sharing so much. Make sure that you're paying attention to what accounts are logged in and log out when you can. Clear your browser history if you don't want your kids' search terms to show up when you're sharing your screen, that sort of thing.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head of different logons for each individual in the house was super useful. That allows each person to have their own time on the machine. You can see also this is a best practice. You limit them so they don't have admin rights to the machine, so they can't install software and thus cause a virus or malware installation. So kind of the best practices don't change if the kids are using it versus you're using it. You should absolutely kind of follow those guidelines. And once again, one of the things that we've seen as well is like machines that people haven't really used for, let's say, production or heavy lifting are now being pressed into service. People breaking out stuff from the closet and blowing off the dust and saying, "Oh, this can probably work for Google, right?" And I mean, and JP, you've seen that. You're enough people, right? Like this, what's
Yeah, and
contacting you.
yeah, one of the other questions we get a lot of is, what to do with a home machine when there's problems with it, and exactly that. Like sometimes I have gotten lots of questions from family and other friends to like, hey, here's this thing. Is this going to be good enough to do whatever? And in a lot of cases, it's an old machine that hasn't been turned on. And my first answer to that is, yeah, probably, but you're going to need to run a ton of updates first because it's been
Yes.
offline. You got to make sure it's safe and secure. But let's
Yep.
say you've got a machine, it's been working, you're up and running, and something happens to it, and it's again a home machine. Depending on what the problem is, there's a few different things you can try doing. If you're having trouble accessing the classroom resources or things along those lines, there should be through your school, your children's school, someone that you can contact, either their teacher or an advisor, or someone that can help them get help with using those tools or accessing that stuff. If it's a problem with the computer, like really, like it's a whole machine and it's really broken, especially if it's an older machine, you want to be careful and aware of whether it's worth repairing it or replacing it. And I don't throw that out lightly, but if you're looking at, taking a machine to a place that charges hourly to fix it, and they're telling you it's going to be a few $100s to fix that machine, you may be able to find a refurbished machine from either Best Buy or around the area here. Micro Center is a fantastic resource. Uh, Target, even Walmart, places like that. You may be able to find a low cost, under $300 or $400 machine that will do the things that you need to do, and in the end be a better option than paying somebody to fix an older machine that they may
Mhm.
not even be able to fix. So those are things to keep in mind when dealing with a machine that's not working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, and also a lot of the new software and new programs that you and your kids are using, they have minimum specifications. So you can look up on their website, just Google
Mhm,
it, or even ask the school if they might be able to provide that for you, and they can say, this works best if you run this much RAM, or
mhm.
you do need a working camera, but they may have ideas for some cheap ones you can add on if you
Right.
don't already have a computer with one. So yeah, so use those resources because people are really providing resources. I mean, hey, we are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, right.
but definitely look that up. You can find out what the minimum specs are. You can find
Mhm.
out what the requirements are, and make sure that you like if your computer doesn't match that, it may be time if that is a possibility for you. So if not, we always
Cool.
recommend updates and reboots.
Yeah, absolutely. Restart it. Don't close the lid on a laptop. Give it a full restart or sleep it.
Yeah.
One last thing, I think that resource that might be useful is testing the speed of your internet in your house. Just because it may be as simple as restarting your cable modem or Fios router, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
and you may be having issues. Just give that a whirl. Speedtest.net. It's a great resource to see, and sometimes you check it throughout the day, you'll get some different results. And just to
Mhm.
go back to something Justin said that is really important is wired versus wireless. Wireless is always going to be slower, not nearly as fast. And that's another thing. If your machine does not have a Ethernet port on it, you can buy for USB Ethernet for like $14. They're really low cost, and they
Mhm.
really make a huge difference in terms of the machine's access and for the saving some wireless bandwidth. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. All right, let's move on to our next thing. We've put together a couple of different resources. Just compiled them. There's some great resources out there on software learning resources. I'm gonna let Marianne kind of jump on this one and walk us through a little bit of these.
Oh yeah, so it depends on what you're using. I mean, there is that huge problem if you have multiple kids, they could be using multiple platforms and suddenly you have to learn all this stuff. But there are so many resources. If you're using Microsoft with Office 365, they have specifically a student help learning center, which is super helpful. If you're just using it for yourself, they also just have their own normal learning center, but the link down there is for the student help center. If you're using Google G Suite, like my stepdaughter is using, they have Education Learning Center too. So that's edu.google.com. Google's Learning Center is actually really fantastic, and I recommend it for a lot of people. even if you're just using Google for yourself, they're really good at that. They have GIFs that show you exactly what you need to do. You can search by whatever function you're using. So if you're like, oh, I need help with Gmail, oh, I need help with Google Meet, this is what we're working on. You can do it by the program. So it's really use those online resources. If you're using something besides those two, just do a search on it. They will have some resources for you. They want you to use their product. They want you to be able to use it well and be champions for it. So definitely look that up. I know a lot of students actually have been immersed in technology. It depends on, what school you go to, what region you're in, or what you've had at home and that experience. But there are some things that if you involve them in helping with the solutions and involve them with looking it up, it'll be a learning experience for them. I mean, students need to learn how to find solutions to things. That's a huge part of something they're going to use when they're older. But also if they've been using it, like I know that my stepdaughter's been using Google before this ever happened. So she just needs a little bit of help, but she's like, oh, this is how I usually do it. Then I can learn from her what she does, how she sees the problem, and then I can use my solutions to help her if there's anything that she doesn't know how to do.
Right.
So that's, if this is your first time with kids on computers, I know that's tough. So we are actually going to post a lot of additional resources in a separate blog post. So that'll be available for you guys, student learning resources, so that they can look up things on how to use some things, or even just like, things that they can entertain themselves with, things that you can use for curriculum and things like that. So we've got a lot of resources for you to check out. So yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Check it out. Awesome. So just kind of put this into like one little wrap up. We just want to say thank you to all the teachers out there who are working really hard to kind of change massive change in how they work, how they teach, how they interact with their students. I know many of them have children themselves, so they're both parenting and teaching at the same time, so it's really hard. So it's awesome. And just talking to a lot of people, my sister-in-law as well, and it's definitely not easy. I think that a lot of people have this kind of myself included, have to have a lot more patience, especially with teachers and with their kids, as they don't necessarily know themselves what they're doing. They're not going to be productive as they normally have been, or they may not have a much harder time something. So it's super important that we kind of have that patience and just everyone chill out.
Yeah, we're putting a lot of pressure on everybody, a lot of on the teachers for new system who dis, a lot on the parents because suddenly they're having to basically be homeschooling, and we just want to make sure that everyone knows that this isn't typical, and it's okay for things to fall aside because it is atypical. It's us. We're managing a crisis, so it is really important to sort of forgive yourself, but at the same time your kids are also being given the responsibility of managing their own time, which a lot of them don't necessarily have. So that's one way that you can help them is self-motivation. Something I didn't learn till college. So if you're, 8 and 9-year-olds are having to do this, you're gonna, that's a skill that you can definitely help out with.
Yeah,
it's just helping them with schedule and stuff.
Yeah, I did ask Felicia what she would want parents to know or things that could help, and I was expecting, how to use G Suite or tools from there, and what she said was, no, the biggest thing would be to if parents would look at the schedules that the students have posted, look at so that they can be aware of when they have classes, what assignments they actually have, and spend more time than they normally would following up with them, making sure that they're doing their work, helping them, things like that, because it is a really challenging situation for a lot of students, especially like Marianne said, it's being able to focus and motivate when there's both so many distractions in the house and so few things that they can do otherwise. So it kind of makes that, all you want to do is look at your phone or play games or do something like that, as opposed to right. So being attentive to that when you can, and following up with them.
My sister's a high school teacher, and even in the classroom, sometimes she has to be like, they're looking real low at their lab. So if you can, get rid of any of their phones or devices that they aren't using for learning during the time to prevent that distraction. And honestly, if you frame it for them as like, yeah, you're going to be working solidly on schoolwork this hour, but then you can play, like
Yeah.
it'll get them to finish it quicker, and that's a lesson they have to learn too. But that's something that you can sort of impart to them.
That's kind of what we're doing in our house, is they have a pretty schedule set up, and when they work, and and also as someone who probably sits at my, I feel like I've been working more now than I had been before, and it's a kind of a good distraction, not distraction, but takes your mind off of work, and it might be useful. Just give a couple minutes and just, hey, what's going on over here? Another thing I highly recommend. This is something that my family always did when I was younger, was have a meal with them, have lunch with them. Take that time and have lunch, have dinner, maybe a snack, a cup of coffee, that sort of thing. And I think that's a great way of like, hey, what are you guys doing? What did you learn in school today? And just kind of make it like an engagement thing. So that's good. So I'm going to wrap it up here. And I think that this is great. Hope that people find this really useful. We're gonna, as Marianne said, we're going to throw a whole bunch of resources up on our blog post. Please send us some feedback on it and let us know what you think. And if there's anything we can do better. And then once again, I'm going to give you the dirty jobs kind of request. If you have a question, a need, or something you want to know more about, please send us. We'll do our absolute best to answer it as completely as possible. And a little preview for our next session. We are going to have a very special guest, Stefan Kaup, around Ring Central. He's kind of our point person on our Ring Central deployments, and we really love Ring Central as a platform, and we want to just give you guys some idea of what it does and how we use it at Valiant and how it may help you in this remote work. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. If you guys want to jump in there, give you a big wave and come on. All right.
See you guys next time.
See you on Friday. Bye, everybody. Thank you.